In the grand house, the silence was heavy, like it could swallow you whole. It wasn't the kind of silence you'd find in a peaceful home, but in a place where you felt more like a guest than a person who belonged. The tall walls were covered in dark paintings, and the cold marble floors made every step echo. The house had always been this way, a place where everything was in its right place, except for the people who lived there. Maya Ellis stood by the kitchen window, staring out at the dark yard. She wasn't just tired, she was worn out. Her back ached from scrubbing floors, and her head throbbed from all the thoughts that never left. It had been a long day, but it wasn't over yet. Her hands were rough and raw from cleaning, but the real pain was in her chest. It was a kind of tired that came from not being able to rest, not being able to take a moment for herself. Her daughter, Lila, sat on the floor nearby, her thin legs tucked under her, trying to read a book. But her eyes kept drifting to the clock on the wall. She was hungry. Maya could see it in the way Lila kept looking at the kitchen door, listening for the sound of the staff's dinner being cleared away. They had worked through most of the day, and now Lila was waiting for the scraps, the leftovers that no one else wanted. Maya wanted to tell her daughter it would be okay, but deep down, she knew it wouldn't be. Not tonight. Maya took a deep breath. She couldn't let her daughter see how much fear was creeping up inside of her. Lila had already asked too many questions about their situation, questions Maya did not have answers to. She could not tell her daughter about the medicine bills that kept piling up or the hospital letters that were starting to turn red with warnings. She couldn't explain the exhaustion that had settled deep into her bones, the kind that no sleep could fix. The silence in the kitchen was finally broken by a soft, familiar sound, the scraping of a cart being pushed across the cold floor. Lila's eyes widened, and Maya quickly turned to her. "Stay here," she whispered. But Lila was already on her feet, slipping quietly toward the door. Maya's heart sank. She didn't need to tell her daughter to stay away from the kitchen cart. She knew what it meant. The leftovers would be thrown away in just a few minutes. It was always like this. The housekeeper, Mrs. Peterson, would come by and make sure everything was cleaned up. But Maya also knew that the staff wasn't always careful. Sometimes there were scraps left behind, a piece of bread, a forgotten bite of meat. It was never enough to fill a stomach, but it was all they had. Lila's small figure disappeared into the kitchen, and Maya followed her. She moved quickly, but not too quickly, trying to keep quiet as the sound of Lila's footsteps grew faint. Her stomach twisted with worry. As Maya stepped into the large kitchen, she saw Lila standing beside the cart, her little hands shaking as she reached for a plate of macaroni and cheese that had been left behind. Lila didn't hear Maya approach. Her small fingers curled around the plate, her hunger clear in her eyes. She wasn't stealing, not in her mind. She was just waiting for the food to be thrown away. But Maya knew better. Before she could stop herself, she gasped. Lila froze. A shadow fell across the kitchen, and Maya turned to see the man who owned the house. Everett King stood in the doorway, dressed in a dark robe, his silver hair messy, his tired eyes narrowing as he took in the scene. Maya felt her heart stop. She wanted to run, to grab Lila and flee, but her legs wouldn't move. Everett's gaze shifted to Lila, his expression unreadable. There was no anger, no rage, just a quiet surprise. His voice was rough when he spoke. "What are you doing?" Lila, still holding the plate in her hands, looked up at him, her eyes wide with fear. She didn't know what to say. She wanted to run. She wanted to apologize. But she only managed to whisper, "I wasn't stealing. It was just leftovers." For a long moment, the room was still, the air thick with the kind of silence that made Maya feel like she couldn't breathe. Lila's face was pale, and her fingers trembled as she slowly set the plate back on the cart. "I'll clean it up, sir," Lila whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "I'm sorry." Maya felt a knot tighten in her chest. She did not know what was worse, the shame Lila felt or the way Everett King was looking at them. His eyes were no longer cold. There was something else there, something unexpected. He sighed, his shoulders sagging as he stepped closer. "No," he said softly, shaking his head. "We'll clean it up together." Maya's heart raced. She wanted to protest, to say something, anything, but her words stuck in her throat. She stood frozen in place as Everett knelt on the cold floor beside Lila, picking up the broken pieces of the plate. It was too much. This wasn't how things were supposed to be. He was the man who owned everything, and they were the ones who cleaned it. But as Everett cleaned, Lila picked up another piece of the broken bowl. Her sleeve rolled up slightly, and Everett noticed something that made him stop. He looked at her tiny wrist, and then at the pin she was holding. A small, worn bronze pin in the shape of an eagle, wings spread wide. His expression changed as he stared at the pin, and for a brief second, Maya saw something in his eyes. Not pity, not judgment, but something else. Something softer. Lila quickly hid the pin again, her face turning red. "Where did you get this?" Everett asked, his voice softer now. "It's my great-uncle's," Lila whispered, her eyes downcast. He was a hero." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken history. Everett didn't say anything for a moment, just staring at the pin in Lila's hand. He seemed to be lost in thought. Before he could say anything more, a sharp voice broke through the moment. "What is going on here?" It was Mrs. Peterson, standing in the doorway, her gaze fixed on Lila, her face flushed with anger. The tension in the room grew thick, and Maya felt her heart race even faster. She had never seen Everett look this way before. Something was different about him, something he hadn't shown in years. "Nothing," Everett said, standing up. His voice was firm now, but there was still something soft in the way he looked at Lila. "I'm going to make sure this is cleaned up. Go back to your duties, Mrs. Peterson." The housekeeper glared at him, but she didn't argue. Instead, she turned and left, her heels clicking loudly against the marble floor. As the door closed behind her, the weight of the moment seemed to lift, but only slightly. Maya's thoughts swirled in her head. She didn't know what to feel. She had been caught. But more than that, she had seen something in Everett's eyes that left her with more questions than answers. Lila stood up and wiped her hands on her pants. "I'll clean it all, Mama," she said quietly. Maya looked at her daughter, who had already stepped back into the shadows, trying to hide the pain she felt. She wanted to tell Lila everything would be okay, but deep down, Maya knew it wasn't that simple. For the first time, she wasn't so sure. The next morning, the grand house felt even emptier than usual. The heavy curtains in the grand hall were pulled back, letting in the dull light of a cold winter's morning. It was not the kind of warmth that could fill you up. It was a light that barely touched the house. It was the kind of morning where even the air felt still, like it, too, was holding its breath. Maya woke to the sound of Lila stirring in the next room, her small voice muttering in her sleep. She had hardly slept, and even now, the exhaustion in her body made her feel like she was moving through a fog. But something in the house was different today. A kind of tension had settled over everything. Something unspoken, something heavy. She stood up slowly, her joints aching from the uncomfortable chair she had spent the night in, and padded quietly to the window. Outside, the world was still. The garden looked like something out of a picture book, quiet, frozen under the gray sky. But Maya didn't feel the beauty of it. She felt the coldness, the distance between her and everything she had hoped for. Lila wasn't just hungry anymore. She was scared. Maya could see it in the way her daughter kept looking over her shoulder as they moved through the house, the way she was afraid to laugh too loudly or speak too freely. It was the silence that scared them both. The silence that had followed them through the halls the night before. The silence that was only broken by the sound of porcelain shattering. But there was something more now, something that couldn't be ignored. The look in Everett's eyes. Maya couldn't shake it. It wasn't just pity. It was understanding. It was something unexpected, and that terrified her more than anything. She was washing her face in the bathroom when the soft knock on the door came. "Mama," Lila's voice called out, quiet but insistent. Maya wiped her face, drying it with a towel, and then opened the door. Lila stood in the doorway, her small figure framed by the light coming in from the hall. Her blonde hair was messy, her face still soft with sleep, but her eyes were wide awake. They had a kind of clarity in them, like she was already thinking ahead, already worrying about what was coming. "Mama, I'm scared," Lila said softly, her small hands clutching the pin. The pin, her great-uncle's pin. She never let it go. Maya crouched down to meet her daughter's gaze. "Scared of what, baby?" "Mr. King," Lila's voice wavered. Is he angry with us?" Maya's heart twisted. She wanted to reassure her, to tell her that everything would be fine, that nothing would happen, but she couldn't lie to her daughter. "Not today. I don't know," she whispered. "But you have to remember, Lila, that we didn't do anything wrong." Lila nodded, but there was something in her eyes that Maya couldn't quite place. "But what if? What if he throws us out?" Don't forget to subscribe to this channel to support our growth, because this story is just getting started. Maya's breath caught. The fear that had been gnawing at her own heart made itself known again, a tight, painful knot in her chest. "Lila," she said, her voice trembling. "We'll be okay. I promise. We just have to keep going. Do you understand?" Lila nodded again, but Maya could see the doubt in her eyes. It wasn't a promise that could fix everything. It wasn't a promise that could fill the emptiness they both felt. As they made their way to the kitchen, the air felt thicker, like the house was watching them, judging them. Mrs. Peterson was already there, moving around the kitchen with a stiff, controlled grace. She didn't look at them. She didn't even acknowledge them as they walked through the door. Maya tried not to notice the way Mrs. Peterson's eyes flicked to Lila's pin, or the way her lips thinned as they entered. Maya knew the housekeeper had been watching them the night before, and she could feel the weight of her gaze even now. But she couldn't let it show. She couldn't let anyone see how much it hurt, how much fear there was inside her. "Good morning, Mrs. Peterson," Maya said, trying to sound calm. Mrs. Peterson didn't respond, her back stiff and straight as she moved about the kitchen, preparing for the day. There was a coldness in her movements that made Maya's stomach twist. It wasn't just the usual rigid efficiency, it was something more. A kind of distance that made Maya feel like she didn't belong here. Like she was invisible. Lila, meanwhile, stood by the counter, her eyes locked on the door. Maya didn't know if it was the tension in the air or the unease she felt, but something about the way Lila was standing made her heart ache. Her daughter was strong, but Maya knew that strength came from a place of survival, not from happiness. Maya stepped up beside her, her hand gently resting on Lila's shoulder. "Everything's going to be okay, sweetheart," she whispered. Lila didn't respond. She just kept staring at the door, her little fingers gripping the pin tightly. The silence in the kitchen stretched between them like a thin, taut rope, ready to snap. Then, as if the silence couldn't last any longer, a soft voice broke through. "Maya." Everett's voice called from the doorway, his tone softer than usual. Maya's heart skipped a beat. She turned slowly, trying to keep her expression neutral. Everett stood there, dressed in his usual sharp clothes, his dark eyes meeting hers. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in the way he stood, something that made her feel both scared and hopeful at the same time. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low. Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. He stepped into the room, his presence filling the space. "You and Lila will be leaving this house today," he said, his words cutting through the air. Maya's breath caught in her throat, but before she could react, he added, "But not in the way you think." The words Everett had spoken hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. "You and Lila will be leaving this house today," he had said. Maya could hardly believe her ears. Her heart had dropped into her stomach, and she had to fight the urge to run from the room. It didn't make sense. It couldn't make sense. But then, his next words came. "Not in the way you think," he had added, his voice calm, almost too calm. Maya stood frozen, her pulse pounding in her ears. She wasn't sure what to think, what to feel. Was he really telling them to leave? Or was there more to this than what he had said? Her mind raced, but no words came out. She couldn't move. She couldn't speak. She simply stood there, her eyes fixed on Everett as if waiting for some kind of explanation. Lila was standing beside her, her small figure tense, her eyes wide with confusion. Maya could feel her daughter's unease, her fear. And in that moment, Maya wasn't too sure what hurt more, the fear in her own heart or the worry she could see in Lila's. Everett looked at Maya with something that resembled hesitation. For a brief moment, his expression softened, and Maya could see that there was more to his words than he was letting on. He wasn't just kicking them out. There was something deeper, something hidden beneath the surface. "But what?" "Come with me," he said suddenly, his voice quieter now. "I'll explain everything." Maya hesitated. It wasn't just her own uncertainty that kept her rooted to the spot. It was the tension in the air, the weight of everything that had been unsaid. But she knew she couldn't stay here forever, not with Mrs. Peterson's icy presence hovering in the background, not with the way the house felt colder every minute. She nodded slowly, her hand reaching for Lila's. Together, they followed Everett out of the kitchen and into the grand hall, where the sunlight was now streaming in through the tall windows. The house looked different in the daylight, less mysterious, less oppressive. It was beautiful, but it also felt strangely empty. Everett led them through the hall, his steps measured, calm. Maya did not know if she was more frightened of the unknown or of the way he seemed to know exactly where he was going. They passed through a series of rooms, the silence between them growing heavier with each step. The house seemed so grand, so pristine, but Maya felt none of it. All she could feel was the distance between them. When they reached the study, Everett opened the door and motioned for them to enter. Maya stepped inside, her mind racing with questions, none of which she could voice. Lila stayed close to her, her small hand still clutching Maya's. Everett closed the door behind them, his expression guarded. "Please, sit down," he said, pointing to the leather chairs near the large desk. Maya took a deep breath and sat, Lila following suit, though she seemed unsure of what was happening. She wasn't the only one. Maya didn't know what to expect. For all she knew, this was the moment Everett would finally tell them everything, or nothing at all. Everett took a seat behind the desk, his posture straight, his fingers tapping lightly on the wood. There was something in his eyes now, something that wasn't just cold authority, but something more. His gaze shifted to Lila, who was sitting silently, her hands folded in her lap. "I know you must be confused," Everett began, his voice low, but steady. "I can't imagine what you're both feeling right now. The last thing I wanted was to make you think you're unwelcome here. But there's more to this situation than you know." Maya's heart skipped. She could feel the tension in the air. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The words felt heavy in her mouth. The fear, the confusion, the uncertainty, it was all flooding back. "Why would you ask us to leave if you don't want us gone?" Everett let out a long breath, as if he had been holding it in for too long. He looked at Maya, and for the first time, she saw something like understanding in his eyes. He wasn't angry with her. He wasn't trying to hurt her. But there was something deeper, something more complicated than she had realized. "It's not about you and Lila leaving," Everett explained. "It's about me giving you something you need. Something that neither of you have had for far too long." Maya frowned. She had no idea what he meant, but her gut twisted with unease. "What do you mean?" she asked again. Everett leaned forward, his elbows resting on the desk. "I've been watching you both for a while. I've seen the way you've been treated here, the way you've struggled, and I've made a decision." Maya's mind spun. She wasn't sure if she wanted to know what decision he had made. But at the same time, she couldn't help but feel a sense of dread at the unknown. "I'm offering you and Lila a place in this house," Everett said, his voice steady, but with a hint of something unspoken. "Not as staff, not as employees, but as guests. You won't have to worry about money, about food, about the things that have been keeping you up at night." Maya blinked, stunned. Her mind couldn't quite wrap around what he was saying. "You want us to stay here?" she asked slowly. Everett nodded. "Yes, but there are conditions." Maya's stomach twisted. Conditions? Of course, there would be conditions. Nothing in life came for free. But before she could ask him what those conditions were, he continued. "I'll take care of everything. Your medical bills, Lila's education, everything," he said. "But you'll need to stay in the house and work with me. Help me bring some life back into it. Help me make this place more than just a building full of emptiness." The words hung between them, the weight of them pressing on Maya's chest. She couldn't believe it. He was offering them everything, security, a future, a way out of the constant struggle. But there was still something in his eyes that made her wonder what the true cost would be. "And Mrs. Peterson?" Maya asked cautiously, glancing over at the door. "What about her?" Everett's expression darkened, but he didn't look angry. "Mrs. Peterson won't be a problem anymore. I've already made arrangements to part ways." Maya's heart skipped a beat. "You're firing her?" "I don't want to fire anyone," Everett said, his voice low. "But some people are a bad influence on others. I can't let that continue." For a moment, there was silence in the room, heavy and thick. Maya looked at Everett, seeing the change in him. This wasn't the man she had thought he was. He was something else, something more complicated, more layered. "So what now?" Maya asked, her voice trembling. "What happens next?" Everett's gaze softened. "Next, you and Lila will have the chance to live without fear. You'll be treated with the respect you deserve. And we'll start fresh. Together." The words "start fresh" together stayed in her head, spinning like leaves in the wind. She wanted to believe them. She truly did. But life had taught her a hard lesson. When something sounds too good, it often hides pain underneath. She looked down at Lila. Her daughter was quiet. Too quiet. Lila sat on the edge of the chair, thin shoulders pulled in, hands wrapped tightly around the bronze pin. Her eyes were fixed on the floor, but her breathing was fast. She was scared. She didn't trust this kindness yet. Maya felt that fear like a sharp sting. "Sir," Maya said at last, her voice low and careful, "I don't understand why you would do all this for us." Everett did not answer at once. He stood and walked toward the tall window behind his desk. Outside, the garden was bright with morning light, but his face stayed shadowed. "Because," he said slowly, "this house has been empty for a very long time." Maya frowned. "But you live here." Everett gave a short, tired smile. "Living and existing are not the same." He turned back to them. His suit was neat, clean, perfect. Everything about him spoke of control, but his eyes did not. His eyes looked heavy, like he had been carrying something painful for years. "I don't sleep much," he continued. "I walk these halls at night. I hear nothing. No laughter, no warmth, just footsteps and rules." Maya swallowed. "I saw your daughter last night," Everett said. "Not just what she was doing. I saw why." Lila flinched. Maya placed a gentle hand on her back. "Lila did not mean any harm," she said quickly. "She was just hungry. I never wanted—" "I know," Everett interrupted gently. "And that is exactly the problem." He sat back down. "A child should never be that hungry," he said. "Not in any house. Especially not in mine." The room felt smaller suddenly. Maya's heart beat fast. "Sir, kindness like this, it comes with strings. I've learned that the hard way." Everett met her eyes. "Then let me be clear. I am not buying your silence. I am not owning you." He paused. "But I am asking for trust." Trust. That word felt heavy. "What kind of trust?" Maya asked. Everett leaned forward. "Stay? Let Lila go to school without fear. Let a doctor see you. Let someone help." Lila looked up at that. "A doctor?" she whispered. "For Mama." Maya stiffened. Everett noticed. His eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but in focus. "You are sick," he said quietly. Maya's breath caught. I'm fine." "You cough at night," Everett replied. "You move slowly. You rest when you think no one sees." Maya's hands trembled. Lila turned to her. "Mama?" Maya forced a smile. "It's nothing, sweetheart." Everett stood again. "It is not nothing. And pretending it is hurting her." Silence crashed over the room. Lila's eyes filled with tears. "Mama, are you going to die?" Maya's chest broke open. "No," she said quickly, pulling Lila close. "No, baby. I'm here." Everett watched them, his jaw tight. "This is why you will leave today," he said. Maya looked up, alarmed. "What?" "You will leave the house," he clarified, "to go to the clinic. My driver will take you." Maya shook her head. "I can't afford." "You don't need to," Everett said. "I already handled it." That word again. Handled. Maya stood abruptly. "No, I can't accept that." Everett's voice hardened just a little. "This is not charity." "Then what is it?" Maya demanded, tears burning her eyes. Everett opened his mouth, then stopped. For a moment, it looked like he wanted to say something else. Something bigger. Something dangerous. Instead, he said, "It is responsibility." Maya stared at him. Lila whispered, "Mama, please." That broke her. Maya sank back into the chair, shaking. Just one visit," she said. "That's all." Everett nodded. "That's enough for today." A knock came at the door. Mrs. Peterson stepped in. Her face was calm, but her eyes were sharp. Cold. She looked from Everett to Maya to Lila. "The car is ready," she said stiffly. Maya felt a chill. As they stood to leave, Mrs. Peterson leaned slightly toward Maya and whispered, low enough that only she could hear, "You should be careful. Men like him do nothing without reason." Maya froze. Everett did not hear it, but Lila did. She gripped the pin tighter, and for the first time, fear returned, stronger than hunger ever was. Subscribe to this channel to support our growth. The car ride was quiet. Too quiet. Maya sat stiff in the back seat, her hands folded in her lap. Lila sat beside her, leaning close, holding the bronze pin so tight her fingers had turned pale. Outside the window, tall buildings passed by, but Maya barely saw them. Her mind was full of noise. "Be careful. Men like him do nothing without reason." Mrs. Peterson's words echoed again and again. Maya had lived long enough to know kindness could turn sharp. She had trusted before. She had paid for it. Promises were easy. Safety was rare. "Are you okay, Mama?" Lila whispered. Maya forced a smile. "Yes, baby. Just thinking." The driver did not speak. He wore a dark suit, clean and pressed, eyes forward, hands steady on the wheel. Everything about him felt controlled, just like Everett, just like the house. The clinic was large and bright. White walls, soft chairs, the smell of clean air and medicine. People smiled at them when they walked in. Not fake smiles, real ones. That alone felt strange. A nurse knelt in front of Lila. "And who is this brave young lady?" Lila hesitated, then whispered her name. "You can stay with Mama the whole time," the nurse said kindly. Lila nodded and squeezed Maya's hand. The doctor was gentle. He listened. He asked questions. He did tests. Maya tried to stay calm, but every cough felt louder in the quiet room. Every breath felt heavy. When the doctor finally sat down, his face was serious. "Maya," he said softly, "your lungs are damaged. This has been going on for a long time." Maya's heart sank. "Is she very sick?" Lila asked in a tiny voice. The doctor looked at Lila carefully. "She needs treatment. Soon." But she came in time. Maya closed her eyes. Time. She had been running out of it without knowing. "And the cost?" Maya asked, already bracing herself. The doctor paused. "That has already been taken care of." Maya's eyes flew open. "What?" "Mr. King made sure of it," the doctor said gently. Maya's chest tightened. Everett again. When they returned to the house, the sun was low in the sky. The big doors opened silently. Inside, the house felt different. Lighter, quieter in a new way, but not peaceful. Staff moved quickly. Voices whispered. Eyes avoided Maya. Something was wrong. Lila noticed too. "Mama, why is everyone acting funny?" Before Maya could answer, Everett appeared at the end of the hall. He looked calm. Too calm. "How was the appointment?" he asked. Maya nodded slowly. "I need treatment." "You will get it," he said. "You will rest. Starting now." Maya took a breath. "Sir, why are people whispering?" Everett hesitated. That was new. "Because," he said, "changes are coming." At that moment, Mrs. Peterson stepped forward. Her face was tight, her lips thin, her eyes burned with anger she was barely hiding. "This is a mistake," she said sharply. "You are breaking rules. Staff is confused. Morale is dropping." Everett's voice was calm but firm. The rules needed breaking. Mrs. Peterson's eyes snapped to Maya. "You see," she said coldly. "This is what happens when lines are crossed." Lila stepped in front of her mother. "She's sick," Lila said, her voice shaking but strong. "And she's kind." The room went silent. Mrs. Peterson stared down at the child. "Go to your room." "No," Everett said quietly. That one word landed hard. Mrs. Peterson turned to him, shocked. "Sir, you will not speak to them like that again," Everett said. Something dangerous flashed in Mrs. Peterson's eyes. "You are making a very big mistake," she said. Everett stepped closer. "And you are forgetting your place." Mrs. Peterson's jaw clenched. She turned and walked away, her heels sharp against the floor. Lila looked up at Everett. "Are we in trouble?" Everett looked down at her. His face softened. "No," he said, "but someone else is." That night, Maya could not sleep. She lay awake in the guest room, listening to the house breathe. Somewhere down the hall, a door closed softly. Footsteps moved. A voice whispered. Then silence again. Maya held her breath. She did not know why Everett was helping them. She did not know what Mrs. Peterson was hiding. But she felt it now. The kindness had a cost. And the truth was getting close. That night, the house did not sleep. It breathed. Maya felt it as she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The soft sheets felt too clean, too new. Lila slept beside her, curled like a small bird, one hand still holding the bronze pin. Her face looked calm, but Maya knew better. Her daughter only slept deeply when she felt safe. And tonight, safety felt thin. Maya coughed softly, turning her face into the pillow so she would not wake Lila. Her chest burned. The doctor's words came back to her. "You came in time." Time. That word scared her. A faint sound reached her ears. Footsteps. Slow. Careful. Maya held her breath. The steps stopped outside their door, then moved on. Her heart beat fast. This house had rules. Invisible ones. And someone was breaking them. The next morning, the house felt tense. Staff whispered. Doors closed quickly. Eyes dropped when Everett walked past. Maya noticed something else too. Mrs. Peterson was gone. Her desk in the hallway was empty. Her clipboard missing. Her sharp voice nowhere to be heard. "Where is she?" Maya asked one of the younger maids quietly. The girl swallowed. I don't know, ma'am." That alone told Maya everything. Lila tugged at her sleeve. "Mama, did Mr. King make her leave?" Maya didn't answer. She didn't know the full truth yet. But she could feel it coming, like a storm you smell before you see. Later that day, Everett asked Maya to come to the study. Alone, Maya's hands shook as she followed him. The study was warm, filled with books and old photos. One photo stood out. A woman smiling. Bright eyes. Kind face. You noticed her, Everett said softly. Maya nodded. She was beautiful. My wife, he said. Clara. His voice cracked. Just a little. I lost her, he continued. And after that, I stopped seeing people. I let rules replace care. Maya listened. She did not interrupt. I hired Mrs. Peterson because she ran things cold and clean, Everett said. I thought that would keep the pain away. He looked at Maya. I was wrong. Maya's heart tightened. I started noticing things, Everett said. Food missing. Staff afraid. Children not allowed in spaces meant for warmth. His jaw tightened. Then I saw Lila. Maya swallowed. She reminded me of someone, Everett said quietly. Who? Maya asked before she could stop herself. Everett stood, walked to a drawer, opened it. He pulled out a small photo. A little girl. Thin. Bright eyes. Holding a pin. Maya felt dizzy. That was me, Everett said. I was raised poor. Hungry. My mother cleaned houses too. Maya's knees went weak. She died young, he continued. I survived because one man helped us. No reason. No reward. He looked at Lila's pin, now resting on the desk. That pin, he said, belongs to a unit I once funded. The story behind it matters to me. Maya's eyes filled with tears. So you helped us because, she whispered. Because I saw myself, Everett said. And because I let this house forget what kindness was. A knock came at the door. A man stepped in. Tall. Serious. Sir, he said. We found proof. Everett nodded. Mrs. Peterson had been stealing. Lying. Hurting staff. Letting fear grow while she took money meant for care. She used rules to hide cruelty, Everett said. Maya closed her eyes. She will face consequences, he added. But more importantly, this house will change. Everett turned to Maya. I want you to stay, he said. Not as staff. Not as a favor. Maya looked up, shocked. Then as what? Everett hesitated. Family, he said. The word hit her hard. Before Maya could answer, Lila ran into the room. Mama, she cried. Someone took my pin. Maya's heart stopped. Everett stood fast. Who? Lila's voice shook. Mrs. Peterson. The room went cold. Because Mrs. Peterson was supposed to be gone. Maya's heart pounded in her chest. The room felt as though the walls were closing in, pressing in on her. Lila's face, pale and frightened, was all she could see. The little girl was holding her breath, looking up at both Everett and Maya with wide, confused eyes. Mrs. Peterson took my pin, Lila repeated, her voice small. I saw her. She went into the study and took it when no one was looking. Maya felt the room spinning. The same pin that Lila's great-uncle had worn. A pin that had meant so much. Something Lila had held on to as a symbol of her family's strength was now gone. Stolen. Everett's expression was hard to read. His eyes narrowed slightly, but Maya could see the storm beginning to build within him. He walked toward the door, his voice tight. Stay here. I'll deal with this. Maya opened her mouth to speak, but the words caught in her throat. She wanted to stop him, to ask what he was going to do, but she knew that whatever happened next, it was going to change everything. She turned to Lila, who was staring at the empty space where her pin had been. Sweetheart, it's going to be okay. We'll figure this out. Lila nodded, though Maya could see the fear still in her eyes. She was too young to understand the weight of everything that had just happened, but Maya could feel it in the way her daughter's small hands trembled. Maya turned back to the study, waiting in the silence, feeling as though the world was standing still. Everett returned minutes later, his steps purposeful, his jaw clenched tight. He was not alone. Mrs. Peterson stood behind him. Her face was pale, her hands trembling at her sides. She didn't speak. She didn't look up. Her eyes were cast downward as if she were already defeated, knowing what was coming. Everett didn't say a word as he entered the room, his presence filling the space like a storm. He looked at Maya first, then Lila, and finally, he locked eyes with Mrs. Peterson. You, he said coldly. You took something that didn't belong to you. Mrs. Peterson opened her mouth, but the words caught in her throat. She stood still, like a statue, trembling. The power she had once held in the house, the authority that she had carried with her so freely, was gone now, shattered. There was no fight left in her. No excuses. She had crossed a line. You stole from my guest, Everett continued. From a child who was already living with enough fear. Mrs. Peterson's lips trembled, and her hands clenched into fists at her sides. Sir, I didn't mean any harm. I thought you thought. Everett interrupted, his voice rising now. You thought you could take from a child who's already lost too much? You thought you could hide your lies behind rules. There was a long pause. Maya's throat was dry. She wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. She felt as though the air had thickened around them, every moment heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. Finally, Everett turned to the man who had followed him into the room. George, escort Mrs. Peterson off the property. Now, George, the head of Everett's security, nodded grimly and moved forward. Mrs. Peterson didn't fight. She didn't argue. She simply turned, her face pale and defeated, and allowed George to guide her out of the room, her shoulders slumped. The door closed behind them, and for a moment, the silence in the room was almost too much to bear. Maya glanced at Everett, his shoulders tense, his posture rigid, as though he were still holding back, still weighing the cost of everything that had just happened. Lila, her face still pale, took a few cautious steps toward Everett. Is she gone? She asked in a whisper. Everett nodded, his eyes softening when he looked at her. Yes, Lila. She's gone. The weight of that simple truth sank into Maya's chest. But something else lingered too. The feeling that maybe, just maybe, something good could come from this. A chance to finally start again. Everett turned to Maya, his expression shifting. I've been living in this house with ghosts for too long. I've kept people away, kept myself away. I thought that by hiding behind rules and control, I could protect myself from the pain of loss. But I've been wrong. So wrong. Maya stared at him, her heart pounding. I don't understand, she whispered. Everett took a deep breath. It's not about being strong or keeping control anymore. It's about living. It's about being a part of something real. And that means not shutting people out, not keeping them in fear. Maya blinked, unsure if she was hearing him right. You're saying you want us to stay? Everett looked at her, his eyes steady. Yes, I'm asking you, Maya. Not as an employee, not as someone to take care of the house. I'm asking you to stay as part of this family. Maya's chest tightened. She looked down at Lila, who was watching her with wide, hopeful eyes. The pin was still clutched in her hands, and though it wasn't the same as before, it felt like the start of something new. Stay, Everett repeated quietly, his voice soft. Let's make this house more than just walls and rules. Let's fill it with something real. Tears welled up in Maya's eyes. For the first time in what felt like forever, she felt a crack in the wall that had been built around her heart. A promise of hope. A chance. Okay, she whispered, her voice shaking. Okay. The days after Mrs. Peterson's departure felt different. The house, once so cold and silent, seemed to breathe a little easier. There was a new kind of lightness in the air. It wasn't just the sunshine that broke through the windows. It was something that had been missing for a long time. The feeling of belonging. A family. Maya had never imagined her life could shift so drastically. Just a few days ago, she had been unsure of how she would even make it through the next hour. But now, she stood in a room that felt warmer, not because of the house's grandness, but because of the people inside it. Everett, though still quiet and reserved, seemed to be different. He was opening up in ways that Maya hadn't expected, not just to her, but to Lila as well. They were no longer guests in the house. They were part of it. A new chapter had begun, one where rules were no longer walls keeping them apart. Instead, there was a promise of something more. Lila was back to her bright, carefree self. She ran through the halls, laughter echoing through the rooms, filling spaces that had once felt hollow. She was free from the hunger, from the fear, from the weight of having to pretend everything was fine when it wasn't. She was simply a little girl again. And as for Maya, she was beginning to understand that sometimes it takes the breaking of old rules, the dismantling of old fears, to make room for something truly beautiful. Life wasn't about surviving the hardest moments. It was about finding the strength to live through them and to find hope again, even when things seemed impossible. Everett, too, had learned something. He had spent so many years living with ghosts, afraid to let anyone in, thinking that control would bring peace. But it had only brought isolation. He had been living in a house full of empty spaces, haunted by his own regrets. Only now, with Maya and Lila, did he realize what he had been missing, the kind of love that fills every corner of a home, the kind of kindness that no amount of control could ever replace. As Maya sat with Everett and Lila in the grand, yet now warm, living room, She found herself thinking about the journey that had brought them here. It hadn't been easy. There had been pain, fear, and betrayal. But those struggles had made her stronger, made them all stronger. They had faced the worst of it and come out on the other side, not unscathed, but better for it. She looked at Lila, who was sitting by the fireplace, the light dancing in her eyes. Then at Everett, who was gazing out the window with a calm expression. She didn't know what the future would bring, but she knew one thing for sure. They were going to be okay. Kindness can change everything. It can rebuild what was broken, heal what was hurt, and offer a new beginning. Don't be afraid to give kindness, even when it feels like it won't be received. It has the power to transform. Strength comes from vulnerability. It's easy to think that strength comes from hiding our weaknesses, from putting up walls, and keeping everything in control. But real strength comes from being open, from facing the fear and pain that we try to hide. It's in allowing ourselves to trust, to let others in, and to accept help when we need it the most. Sometimes, family isn't just about blood. It's about finding the people who truly care, who see you for who you are, and who support you no matter what. This story reminds us that we can create our own families, our own sense of belonging, if we open ourselves to others. Hope often comes in unexpected forms. Just when things feel hopeless, when it seems like everything is lost, remember that hope often comes in unexpected forms. It might be a small act of kindness, a new relationship, or simply a change in perspective. Keep your heart open to the possibility that better things are ahead. It's easy to be weighed down by past mistakes, regrets, and fears. But the past does not have to dictate your future. Each new day is a chance to rewrite your story, to choose how you want to live and what kind of person you want to become. Even after the hardest struggles, there is always room for a new beginning. No matter how dark or difficult life may seem, we always have the power to change our path, to start fresh, and to rebuild what was once lost. Keep going. Even when it seems like the world is against you, even when you feel alone or lost, remember that you have the strength to rise again. The toughest moments in life are often the ones that shape us the most. They prepare us for the better days that are ahead. So don't give up. The light is always there, even if you can't see it right now. You are stronger than you think. Life is not about never falling, but about always rising, no matter how many times you've been knocked down. Every step forward, no matter how small, is a victory. Keep moving forward with hope, and you'll find your way. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I hope you found something in this story that resonates with you, something that encourages you to keep moving forward, no matter what challenges you face. I wish you all a very Merry Christmas. May this season bring you peace, joy, and the strength to begin again. Subscribe to this channel to support our growth. Thank you for watching. See you in the next story.